Hey everybody, this is Perch, and this is an honest question. It's actually an open question. I think it's a subjective question. I think there's one objective aspect to it, and we'll get there. But by and large, this is a your mileage may vary kind of question. You can view this really however you want, and there's not a entirely right or a wrong answer. Um, the complications around comic storytelling is that for at least not the independent books, for the big two, the ones that are franchises. And franchises has a definite meaning. That meaning being, it's an IP. It's designed to survive past the writer who's on the book and move on. As much as people liked Chris Claremont back in the day, Chris Claremont didn't own the X-Men, so he got to write their adventures for a period of time, and then he goes away, and somebody new comes in, and maybe they're good, maybe they're bad. That's the company who's basically acting as a shepherd to this IP. And there's been plenty of, I think, articles and interviews and comments in the past about should when the creator, maybe a beloved creator, somebody who's had a good run on the book, when they leave, should the book end? Alan Moore certainly made that case a lot of once he was done with it, it was over. But at the same time, when you work for a company whose job it is to create, curate, and manage IP, that's just not feasible. It shouldn't be surprising to anyone, particularly Moore, since he signed that contract, that DC wants the Watchmen to live on. They make money off that. They're not out to make art. They're out to make money. They're an IP farm. There's not anything gross or disgusting about that. It's just a fact. But there's a lot of kind of readers who take both sides of this issue. People who think that hey, you can enjoy a run with the creator who's on it, and when they go, you don't have to keep going, and that could be where it ends for you. It doesn't bother you that it keeps going. There's other people who view it as art is sacred, and you can't. It should be concluded. But and you can point to a lot of different examples. Manga, which a lot of people point to, is by and large kind of in that second category. Once a creator is done with it, it's done. Comic books are not like novels. If Stephen King writes a book, he's done. Unless he specifically sells off his rights or brings somebody in to write more adventures there, there won't be a it two or stand two, until the point that Stephen King wants to grab some cash and he does it himself. There won't be sequels. The publisher can't go, hey, we really like that this it book. Let's go ahead and make a sequel. As I'm saying this, by the way, right now, somewhere in the back of my head is like, did he already do a like? I know he did a sequel to The Shining. Did he do sequels to because he's tied up several of his books before. I used to like Stephen King a lot. I like that kind of shared universe that he had going on, like books like Salem's Lot. And then at some point, and I'm trying to remember when it was. I'm reading one of those books, and it's like, okay, I'm out. And it was I didn't come back. It was like it was very much all right. I've seen all this. I'm okay. I've read enough, and I didn't return. And that's kind of unusual. Most people they slowly dip out. They don't have this immediate I'm gone. Anyway, but comic books. The point here is that the art or the creation is Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's adventures are intended to be serialized, told by lots of people, told as kids stories, told as adult stories. That's the creation that was made. It's a product more than a specific story. And again, it's how well that sits with you in your mind is really up to you. There are definitely comic readers that I've encountered in the past who love indies for precisely the reason that they're over. So that was like that's a question in of itself. So certainly interested to get your answer. Which do you prefer? What do you like? And be honest. A lot of people will say, "Well, I prefer art," but they buy nothing but big two books. So do you? I think there's nothing wrong in saying, I love Batman, I love James Bond, I love these characters that lots of different people have had a hand in, and quite frankly, for me, I'll admit my bias. I do enjoy lots of indie comics. I do enjoy stories, that will end. But I also enjoy these IP products because I get to see a lot of different creators tell stories. And that's cool. I get to see different styles. I get to contrast, a Stan Lee, Jack Kirby style with a Chris Claremont style with a Jim Lee style. I get to see all these different people come in and play with the book. If they ended these creations with the originators, we would never there would never have been a Chris Claremont run. There would never have been a Grant Morrison run. To some people, that may be a plus. I don't know, but anyway, it's just kind of the way things go. But it brings up my second question for you, which is something to talk about, which is how much now. Okay, if we accept that these comics are, IP creations, lots of people are going to come in, then I think you get to a cardinal rule that should never be broken, and that rule is don't destroy the product. As a creator, you can't come in, you can't do so much damage to the product itself that nobody else can come in and tell stories. I think Hickman made a comment in an interview when he was gearing up to do the Hoxpox, and said, you can't break the toys. You have to, you take them out of the toy box, you get to play with them for a while, and then you got to put them back in, and you got to leave them for another creator to tell. Now, I'm not sure he did what he said. So he said this, but he kind of made so many dramatic changes to the X-Men that the only way to put the toys back in the toy box was, in some ways, what he set up the MacGuffin of Moira, dying just reboots the universe and we start over again. That's not exactly putting the toys all in the toy box. It's saying we're going to have to do a forcible reboot in order to to let somebody else come in and tell a different story. But even outside of that, I think that when you're writing a character and you do certain character beats and certain moments with that character, you forever put it in people's heads. Even if you later reboot, even if you later change, it's hard to come back from that. I think DC discovered this when they had Dr. Light, try and rape Sue Dinby. How do you come back from that? I don't think you can. Even if you reboot your universe and Dr. Light is like this cheerful, klutzy, villain. If you have, people are always going to remember that, that guy in a previous story was a rapist. You can't. There's a line that gets crossed. Over in the X-Men right now, in the Immortal X-Men, which increasingly I think is just a dreadful title. I like Kieran Gillen. I think he's a good writer. I've liked his indie stuff a lot, but I am definitely coming to the conclusion that I can't stand his big two work, specifically his work on X-Men. He was the one that gave us kind of the goofy ass Sinister back in his original X-Men run. But he took over for Matt Fraction, I think, right? Is that, do you follow There may have been some other people in between. But I can't stand some of the things that he's done. And Immortal X-Men is kind of a poster child for, more changes, more things that I think cause lasting damage to the characters. In particular, in the latest issue, we get basically a comic long narration from Xavier. You're seeing this kind of, there's not much going on in the comic. It's a bit of a trick. They basically, Sinister had attacked the council, and then he flees, and the X-Men send some people after him, and they capture him and they throw him in the pit. That's the story. It's a very not a lot going on in this comic, but the comic has this ongoing caption narration from Xavier, and there's a big shock reveal at the end. That's, again, if you're reading the comic, not that shocking, but that's okay. I have no issues with that. I mean, reveals are sometimes best when, they're not Shyamalan twists. They're actually, something that logically leads up. And this one, you could see this one coming, I guess the best way to put it. But in the captions, we learn, Xavier is basically talking about how, he's got he's an incredibly dangerous mutant who has manipulated people through time. And he's kind of like, you should be glad I'm the one who, has this power as opposed to Magneto, because all the humans would be dead. If Magneto had my power, he would have murdered every single, Homo sapien on the planet very quickly. But I'm better than that. That's kind of the thrust of it. And there's a part where he's like, did you know that you can't actually launch a nuclear war? Nobody can launch a weapon. He says, I basically installed a trigger in people's minds that, won't allow them to launch a weapon. I did this, some time ago. If they try, their fingers will just hover over the button. They won't actually be able to launch the missile. And as he's narrating this, it's, he does an effective job of basically summing up the danger and some of the things Xavier would go to. And if you had Xavier's power, maybe you would also do the same thing to prevent, nuclear holocaust. No judgment there. But, even if they reboot the universe, even if they completely wipe everything that Hoxpox has done and they use the Moira out or whatever they happen to do, even if they do that, we've now learned things about Xavier's personality that in a reboot you're not going to forget. You're not going to be able to go, well, it's all fine. It's just a different version. This stuff carries over. We saw that in the Ultimate Universe, where even kind of this Hank Pym moment was ultimately carried over into the comic. But it's these things have tarnished the characters forever, and tarnish doesn't necessarily mean negative. I'm certainly not comparing, removing the nukes to Dr. Light raping somebody, but I am comparing it to it's a personality, it's a character moment that will persist, whatever kind of, changes and reboots and other things that you do. It's something that is going to live on. And, that often defies what you want from these characters, these stories. You want them to be a blank slate that you can come in and tell a clean new story. And if you've taken that ability away from yourself, that's changed the game significantly. So that's that. I'm curious what you think about that. Regardless, you can certainly come in and take shots at Hickman's run. God knows I have, or Gillen's run. But how do you, first of all, should you live up to the promise? These stories just live on forever. And as a result, you need to be cautious. This is a job of editorial to prevent kind of such severe moments from occurring that you can't come back from them. But as a creator, what responsibility do you have to shepherd these characters and try and make sure that you don't wreck them in the process? You don't make it so that, you're giving the next writer less things they can do. When the X-Men kind of dove in a little bit more to Xavier, may have had the hots for Jean Grey. And certainly there was some early dialogue in the Stan Lee version that suggested that. But when they kind of doubled down on it, again, you can't have Xavier, be an altruistic character after that. No matter what you do, he's going to have these kind of sinister overtones. It's impossible not to. Similarly, you could go down the line of characters that have had this happen to them. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.